When things go wrong as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk. Today our topic is Islamic concept of civilization. Joining us in the studio is Dr. Hatim Al-Hajj. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Hatim Al-Hajj is the Dean of the Sharia Academy in the USA. And also joining us is our in-studio audience. Assalamu alaikum. And I'm your host, Khalil Amunet. I'm going to hand over the show to Dr. Hatim, and he can give his 15-minute introduction to the topic, inshallah.
Well, the topic of Islamic civilization, or the concept of civilization in Islam, is an important topic because we hear a lot about the religious state versus the secular state, or the modern state versus the archaic state, or this or that. So it is important that we understand what where Islam stands in terms of civilization and the various definitions of civilization, and what would be the Islamic state like, and where it would lead humanity, and how did the Islamic State lead humanity in the past with regard to the various aspects of civilization. But before we talk about the Islamic concept of civilization, certainly this phrase itself needs to be broken down, concept of Islamic and civilization.
Yeah.
But I will not go into much detail here because I don't want to be talking about what's concept and what's Islam and what's Islamic, but it is important to talk about what's civilization in the first place. And why is it important? Because certainly you cannot understand where Islam stands from civilization unless you understand what people mean by civilization. Oftentimes when people think of civilization, particularly the public, the lay people, when they think of civilization, they may think of certain concepts that are completely foreign to what civilization is about.
Yeah.
So they may think, for instance, that civilization is to go to parties and for women to take off your hijab, or for men to dress in jeans versus something else, or to shave your beard, or to make your hair look a certain way. And all of this has nothing to do with civilization.
Fashion.
Not only fashion or things of that nature, not only according to Muslims, but according to non-Muslims as well.
Yeah.
So if you look at civilization, if you study the various definitions of civilization, etymologically speaking, where did it come from? It comes from civis, which means citizen in Greek, and civilis, which means pertaining to the citizen. So that gives you a little bit of a hint towards the meaning of civilization. Maybe it talks about government or well-structured community versus anarchist community. Yeah, that's one of the definitions of civilization. But also there are other definitions for civilization. One of the definitions is that it's a state of refinement of manners and culture. That is certainly a valid definition. It's the comfort of the urban life, or the various comforts of urban life. That's also another definition, which is urbanization versus living in the country or something like that. That's another definition of civilization, comforts of urban life. There is writing or knowledge, per se, is a definition for civilization. And in fact, there are various classifications of development from a Western perspective. Keep in mind that when we're talking about the Western perspective of the development of civilization, we're not necessarily agreeing with everything, because we do not consider Adam to be less civilized than the people who live nowadays, of the 21st century. Adam was a prophet who spoke with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And was the first human.
The first human, a prophet. So certainly, the prophets are at the peak of civilization.
Yeah. Even though they lived in the past, which we consider ourselves, we're much more civilized than.
Because, if are you more civilized because you drive a car and I don't have a car? Does that make you more civilized?
Yeah.
Are you more civilized because you have this gadget or that gadget? Regardless of how you use those gadgets, for good or for bad, and I don't have it. Are you more civilized because you have an iPhone and I have like an old
Nokia?
Yeah, for instance, that's something that people have to really critically examine.
Yeah.
So that knowledge is another definition of civilization, and where I branched off, I think I was talking about the stages, the Danish classification of the Stone Age, and then the polished stone, and then the bronze and iron, and so on. But there is another definition. There is another division of development from a materialistic viewpoint, which is you have savagery, you have barbarism, and then you have civilization proper. And according to this classification, what moved humanity from the era or the period of barbarism to civilization proper is the discovery of writing.
Yeah.
So writing is one of the definitions. So urbanization, writing and information, manners and culture, government and rule of law versus anarchy. All of these are various definitions of civilization that people talk about. Not how you look or your hairstyle or your whether fashion or any of the
not the car you drive.
Superficial thoughts about civilization. So if that is how we understand civilization, then we can talk in some detail, inshallah, during the episode about where Islam stands from each one of those aspects. Whether it's urbanization, whether it's manners and morals, culture, or the rule of law, structured communities, knowledge and the dissemination of knowledge, and so on and so forth.
So the definition of civilization doesn't have to necessarily do with the passing of time. People don't become more civilized over time. There were civilizations, and they're considered civilized, even though they were in the past. And so it has nothing to do with technology.
Absolutely, humanitarianism is part of the definition of civilization. How humane you are in your behavior should certainly be part and parcel of the definition of civilization. And I don't think that people are more humane, that you're more humane because you happen to exist in the 21st century than someone who existed in the 19th century. It doesn't make you more humane. It doesn't make you more refined in your manners to have just existed in a different era or to have existed in our modern times.
Okay, thank you for that, Doctor. We're going to go for a short break, and we will be right back.
اللهم إني أسألك الهدى
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We were just examining the concept of Islamic civilization. So how can we look at the concept of Islamic civilization from an Islamic perspective?
Like I said, that we have to first know what people mean when they talk about civilization.
Yeah.
They could be talking, and forget about people who are not educated. We're talking about people who are educated, who know what civilization may mean. And in this particular context, then we can be talking about state of refinement of culture and manners.
Yeah.
We can be talking about rule of law versus anarchy, and structured society versus nomadic or anarchist society. We can be talking about writing and the dissemination of knowledge. We can be talking about urbanization and technological advancement. Or we could be talking about humanitarianism. So which one? What do you mean by civilization is what you need to first, and that is always helpful in any dialogue with anyone, in any form of discourse. Let's first identify what it is that we are
basing the
talking about or dialoguing about. What is it? Because the clarification of definitions is essential in order for us not to be just talking in parallel lines and not being able to meet.
Yeah.
So which one of those are we talking about? Which one of those definitions?
Well, let's pick one. Urbanization, for example. There are like nomadic tribes these days, especially in like Arab countries. They're nomadic. They don't really live in an urban culture. What is the opinion on that?
Well, urbanization and technological advancement, they sort of you can talk about them together, or you can separate them into two different categories. But technological advancement and the comforts of the urban life, urbanization, is actually the weakest definition of civilization. Yet, even according to this definition of civilization, which is a very weak definition of civilization, because it will make someone who lives in New York City nowadays by necessity more civilized than someone who lived 100 years ago in some village, regardless of who
his manners
they are,
or his intellect, or
regardless of anything about them.
Or what he perhaps put forward in this world. What did he contribute to the world?
Oh, absolutely. So, but what I'm trying to say is, Islam is not against our urbanization. Islam is not against technological advancement.
It just doesn't fit with the Islamic definition of civilization.
But again, regardless whether it fits or not, but Islam promotes it.
Yeah.
Promotes technological advancement. In fact, Imam al-Nawawi in his book Rawdat al-Talibin says that the knowledge of medicine and math is of the collective obligations, furud al-kifayat, collective obligations. So the whole ummah will be sinning if they do not perfect their knowledge of medicine and mathematics. Islam, as Roger Bacon says, or as Prefold says about Roger Bacon, that he was not the one to introduce the deductive method or the experimental method, but he was rather just a disciple of Muslim scholars who brought the experimental method from Muslim scholars and introduced it to Europe. The same thing is echoed by John William Draper in his book about the intellectual development of Europe, Stanley Poole, The Moors in Spain, and it is echoed in many works of the history of science. So Islam did promote this because the Prophet ﷺ came with a religion that is not counter to logic at all, a religion that invites people to contemplate and ponder, a religion that taught people to rely on themselves and to rely on science and experiment. The Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith that's reported by a Muslim, from several Sahaba, one of them is Anas ibn Malik, said, أنتم أعلم بأمور دنياكم. You know better about the affairs of your dunya. So when it comes to science, when it comes to math, do not expect me to teach you those things. Those things, go ahead and examine the universe and acquire
the knowledge. So I suppose writing would be more correct definition than perhaps.
Writing is one of the definitions. Writing and dissemination of knowledge is one of the definitions of civilization, and it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because prior to the discovery of writing, if we agree that the writing was discovered in that particular conjunction between, the period of barbarism and civilization proper, and it moved the world to civilization proper, if we agree with this classification, writing is important.
Yeah.
That's why the Prophet ﷺ, the captives of Badr, their ransom was to teach the kids in Medina how to read and write.
Yeah.
The first ayah in the Quran, Iqra, read.
Yes.
And so writing is important because prior to writing, it was not possible for the human generations to transmit knowledge, because knowledge grows cumulatively, or gradually in a cumulative way. It grows, but before writing, I can transmit, the previous generation can transmit to the following generation through verbal communication only so much.
It's very limited.
Yeah, it's very limited. Yeah. But once you developed writing, then that cumulative effect.
And it's based on memorization, which most people is very weak.
Yeah.
And it opens up a lot of interpretation, personal interpretation also.
Yeah.
We're going to go to our audience to see if they have any questions.
Yes.
Go ahead.
First of all, thanks a lot for your episode. And I wanted to ask a question about the previous Muslims have a great civilization that changed all the world around this. But how we can return back to this civilization and leading the world again?
Well, do you see Omar radiallahu anhu said to Abi Ubaydah radiallahu anhu, إِنَّا كُنَّا أَذَلَّ قَوْمٍ فَأَعَزَّنَا اللَّهُ بِهَذَا الدِّينِ فَمَهْمَا ابْتَغَيْنَا الْعِزَّةَ فِي غَيْرِهِ أَذَلَّنَا اللَّهُ. We were the most humiliated of people, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us might and power with this deen. So whenever we seek that might in something other than it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala فَمَهْمَا ابْتَغَيْنَا الْعِزَّةَ فِي غَيْرِهِ أَذَلَّنَا اللَّهُ. Allah will cause us humility. So this is basically the general answer, but there is a detailed answer. We have to go back and correct our relationship with Allah as the beginning, because without correcting our relationship with Allah, we will not be able to attain our objective. And even if we attained our objective of materialistic advancement, technological advancement, does this bring about happiness? Does this bring about prosperity in the true sense of the word? Does this bring about true success? In the true sense of the word, success is being technologically advanced the ultimate goal or the ultimate objective, or should it be the ultimate objective? And if you're...
And we've seen, actually the wars have increased, killing has increased, technology brings about nuclear weapons, for example, has brought about nuclear weapons, which, are pretty barbaric, actually, in actuality.
Yes, which is not a condemnation of technology per se, because you should certainly seek that technological advancement, but what matters is how you're going to use it.
Yeah.
The environment in which this technological advancement has taken place, the context in which it has taken place, the spiritual advancement, the moral advancement, intellectual advancement as well of the people that will protect this technological advancement from spinning off control and becoming a cause or a means of destruction for humanity versus being an asset for humanity. Certainly technological advancement could be quite helpful. We could use it to improve our production of crops or to feed the people, to facilitate communication between the people. Those are all good objectives, but it depends on many other advancements, how you use this
and how
technological
humanitarian
advancement.
we are.
So what I'm saying is we have to correct our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we have to start rebuilding the Muslim individual and rebuilding the Muslim community. There is a lot of work to be done, and certainly, the answer to this question, you can't do it fairness in a few minutes. It needs a few episodes. How to rebuild the Muslim individual, how to make the Muslim individual more upright, more critical in his or her thinking, more active or proactive, more positive, more ambitious, how to make the Muslim community more righteous, how to make the governance of Muslim countries also more righteous. We need righteous governance. We need righteous communities. We need righteous individuals. So, but the work needs to start. And the starting point is that we acknowledge that we have deviated and we have left the path that God had drawn for us, and we get back on the path, and then we worry about the details.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the audience? Go ahead.
I would just want to ask you, how did the Islamic civilization affect another great civilization, like Romanian civilization, for example?
How did the Islamic civilization affect other civilizations? Well, if you know that paper was transmitted to Europe through Muslim Spain, that's a big effect, right? The number 0 is is transmitted to Europe. Number 0 it is huge. It is not a simple matter. The Arabic numerals, prior to the Arabic numerals, if you look at the Roman numerals, they wouldn't result in any advancement in math, because one, you put like a line for 1, 2 lines for 2, 3 lines, and then you cross for 5, and then you start again. It is known that this would have not been possible, would have not resulted in any advancement. If I just mentioned that Robert Prefault, in his book In the Making of Humanity, said that Roger Bacon, who is accredited with the experimental method, was not the discoverer of the experimental method, but rather transmitter of the experimental method from Arabic scientists. And whenever they mention Arabs, by the way, they mean by this Muslims, not just Arabs, because Avicenna to them is Arab, although he's not. He's from Uzbekistan, or he's Uzbek from the current Afghanistan, but he's of Uzbek descent, and so he's not Arab per se, but he wrote in Arabic, because the writing in Arabic was a way of globalization of knowledge. Because you write in Arabic, you send the manuscripts to Hajj, to Mecca and Hajj, and then your book could be all over the place in less than 1 year. So the book that Avicenna wrote could be all over the place. People could benefit from it in Spain within 1 year, just because of this first and most stable and permanent convention in human history, the Hajj. It did promote the dissemination of knowledge to various parts of the world, including Europe. The word alcohol, the word chemistry, the all of those they come from Arabic words, and
So the spread of Arabic.
algebra, trigonometry, geometry. In the Columbia History of the World, they said that these sciences are basically Arabic inventions: algebra, geometry, and trigonometry. They said they mean Muslim inventions, but when the Muslims wrote, they wrote in Arabic, so that they're
So through the spread of Islam, knowledge, science, and the Arabic language spread, which led to a higher form of civilization by uniting different peoples into one sort of way of thinking and so. Okay, we're going to go for a break, and we'll be right back.
Be proactive. Dr. Haitham Al-Haddad teaches us how to take a conscious control over our life, set our goals and work to achieve them in Islam. Take firm steps towards your future. Be positive and be proactive.
Every single Muslim needs to have in order to be an effective person.
So proactivity in Islam, how to serve our religion and how to serve our life and our guides through all of this.
The proactive person is always motivated. The proactive person always have high ambition. The proactive person, he will not lose his time. He will not waste his time. The proactive person is a generous person.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're just discovering what is civilization from an Islamic perspective. We're joined in the studio by Abu Abdurrahman, who's a seeker of knowledge and is originally from Texas and is now living here in Cairo. Yes. So what do you think about what was said so far?
Well, I have to agree, and I enjoyed your explanation of what is civilization, especially what is Islamic civilization. We have to really use that as a point of reference, because often when it's discussed in the West or from a Western point of view about civilization, we look at other civilizations and we use our own viewpoint, our own worldview as a reference point and a judgment toward those or against those. And so in the world that we live in today with the war and other atrocities, we in the West tend to use our own worldview and viewpoint to pass judgment upon something and say it's uncivilized, therefore it doesn't meet up to us. And we, by using our own reference, our own worldview as a reference is quite dangerous actually, because now we've decided what is civilization. Yeah. We've decided that our civilization is somehow superior to someone else's, when in actuality it may not be the case.
Yeah. Particularly since it hasn't... the Islamic civilization is much older than Western civilization. I mean, you could sort of say that. I mean, the modern Western civilization.
Of course.
Or the way we live in America, I suppose. So
I think it goes through cycles, because you have the Roman civilization prior to this, and depends on what you mean by civilization also.
Yeah.
But the civilization was not limited to one group of people at all. The torch of civilization was passed from one nation on to the next, and so on.
So, I mean, when we talk about Western civilization, what are we talking about?
There is Chinese civilization, there is Indian civilization, there have been African civilizations, there have been European civilizations, Greek, Roman, etc.
Exactly.
So it varies.
But I mean, what about the Islamic civilization? Has it continued? Is it the same thing? I mean...
the Muslims are not as upright as they used to be. They are not... they're not adhering to Islam as they used to be, which certainly makes their contribution to world civilization much less than it used to be.
The Islamic civilization is often spoke of in the past tense, like it was something that was once great. What do you think about that?
I think it's tragic that we have to think of it that way.
Yeah.
Because in reality, Islam is growing. It's organic. It's a growing religion. And I think when we think of it in the past, we often think of it that way because we want to look back and see the achievements that once were.
Yeah.
And while they're great achievements, we have to also realize at the same time that they're primarily materialistic achievements. But they were of great benefit to mankind, socially, like in terms of medicine, mathematics, and these types of things. And we like to look at that and think of that as the great day of Islam. And
Yeah.
the reality is the great day of Islam is still here today. We have a message to perpetrate. We have a message to send out to people. And that message hasn't changed since day one.
Yeah, I mean, people like to look at the cosmetic things, like architecturally. Obviously, there's, especially in the city of Cairo, there's a lot of great Islamic monuments. But, you know, one of the true monuments is that Islam is still here and still spreading in places like America, which, you know, the Islamic civilization is still spreading, if you consider it that. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, thank you, Khalil. I'd like to ask the Reverend guests about whether or not the Muslims can take ideas and achievements from the other civilizations, like the Western civilizations, because some opinion leaders in Muslim countries say that Islam cannot, or Islam will not allow Muslims to take other ideas or other principles from another civilizations. What do you think about this?
I think it depends on what you intend to do with the things you want to obtain from the West or from another civilization. If you mean by that you want to obtain some type of advancement, technological advancement or so forth, you have to ask, what do I want to do with that? What do I want to achieve with that? And in the context of you want to achieve something that's good for mankind, that brings about true revolution in civilization, I think that's good. But if you want to do it for economic reasons or for reasons of advancement in ways that you think is success, when in reality it's not success, but it's success in the view of the world, then I think perhaps we have to be cautious about taking these ideas and using them as such.
Dr. Hatem, do you have anything to say about the question?
It depends on what is exactly you're trying to transmit or transfer from the West to a Muslim nation or to the Muslim people, because the Muslims are one people whether they live in the West or the East. So for a Muslim, when a Muslim takes from others, when it comes to exact sciences don't have much philosophical, philosophical baggage that comes with exact sciences, such as math, for instance, algebra, for instance, trigonometry. So I think you could take with much ease those sciences. When it comes to natural sciences are also mainly factual. They're not philosophical or ideological, unless we infuse philosophy into them, unless you infuse the theory of evolution into biology. Biology in and of itself does not have much philosophy involved or ideology, unless human beings insert or infuse some ideology into it, and that is when you start to become careful, and you need to be able to sort out what is fact from theory or basically claim. Then you have the other group of humanities, and unfortunately they put religion as a subcategory under this category. Not necessarily, unfortunately. It fits from one angle, but it doesn't fit from the angle of the source that we believe the source of religion is divine, whereas the source of the other humanity sciences or disciplines of humanities are human, not divine. But basically, these are sciences that will help improve the human condition. So when it comes to humanities, such as philosophy, logic, history, etc., then you need to be a lot more cautious because there is so much ideology and philosophy involved here. So you need to use better spectacles, and you need to be more conscious about what is being infused into those disciplines that does not agree with your own religion.
Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Islam never promoted nationalism. Before Islam was the great civilization was one country. So how do you reckon Islam got divided like this into countries?
I mean, it was never always just one country, though, was it? I mean, it was sometimes divided up into multiple countries. But was it still considered one civilization?
There is a theme, a general theme. The centricity of our relationship with Allah is the general theme for any Islamic civilization, regardless of
borders.
The particular dynasty, particular nation, particular group of people. And because, as Brother Abu Abdurrahman said, you can see diversity, but you need to be able to notice the consistency within the diversity. And it is quite noticeable that the general theme that connects us all is the centricity of our relationship with Allah, and the importance of this relationship to any Islamic civilization, regardless of the time and place, nation, etc. Now, there is certainly division amongst the Muslim countries. This did not used to be the case. This is a manifestation of our departure from the true teachings of Islam. Islam never deteriorates as a religion. The conditions of Muslims could deteriorate. The up and down does not affect Islam as an ideology. This is the message that God revealed to humanity to be the last testament, last communication, divine communication. This is a divine message from the divine, the most perfect. So it is not subject to ups and downs, but the condition of Muslims is certainly subject to improvement and deterioration. I think that we have seen deterioration for quite a long time, and hopefully we're seeing the beginning of some awakening, and hopefully that will be rectified, because every awakening goes through a period of somewhat anarchy in the beginning and somewhat a lot of disturbance and disruption of norms, and sometimes mistakes and errors are made, but eventually, hopefully that with enlightenment, through the revelation, will improve, and then we'll see good, fast, consistent, solid progress forward, inshallah.
Well, Brother Abu Abdurrahman, how do you see us regaining this Islamic civilization that was once great? There's Muslims in America here. How do you see us reviving that?
I think, again, we have to look and focus on what we just heard, and that is that at the center, at the very core of Islam, is this divine message from Allah and this guidance that we're given by Him. And that not to be led astray into commercialism, into all of these things. And the question that we just had about division is the best tool the enemy has to conquer and divide. And not to be led into distraction, whether that's through our own desire to achieve something as the world tells us we should. We have to be very careful to know where we're going, know what our goal is, and to strive for that goal no matter what. And it doesn't mean that we can't embrace technologically advanced methods. It doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean we're against those kind of things. But we have to keep in mind what is our goal, what is our mission, and our mission realistically is not of this world. Our mission has to do something that is beyond this world. It is something divine, something true that was given to us, and something that we will return to someday. And if we keep that in mind, we will keep ourselves from being led astray by what the media, what everything the world tells us we should be today. And as long as we focus on that and really know where we are and be happy and content with what Allah has given us, with the provision He provides us with every day, I think we can continue to strive and to struggle, and we will overcome the obstacles that have been put in front of us. I believe this is just a short period in time that we're going through, and I believe there is an awakening, brother, of the Muslim community.
I believe in America there's a huge, and I'm not saying huge, but there is a pretty big awakening as far as Islam in America.
Yeah, it's in fact, Imam Ibn Hazm said that dominance is of two types. There is dominance by the spear and the sword, and dominance by proof and evidence. The first type of dominance is sometimes ours, sometimes the opponents. The second type of dominance is always ours. So whether Islam has that first type of dominance, the might of militaries and so on and so forth, or it doesn't, it will always have the power of proof and evidence that will make people come to Islam, regardless of the condition of Muslims or the power or the weakness of Muslims. And I must say that, look at the financial crisis, and look at the how we could have used this better to get our message across to people. When you have the official newspaper of the Vatican talking about Islamic ethics or Islamic principles of banking and how Western banks need to learn from that. When you have editorials in the Financial Times, Sydney Herald Tribune, the Economist about Islamic financing and how Islamic financing was able to weather the storm and how it has the principles that will protect against much of the trouble that took place, and how universities now, and we could have used all of this better to get our message across. Moral superiority also. We as Muslims need to show that there is moral superiority in Islam. We're not yet reflecting this enough. We have our own troubles. We're not adhering to Islam the way we should be adhering to it. If we truly adhere to Islam and if we truly show the beauty of it, the humanitarianism at the core of the religion, the equality at the core of the teachings of this religion, the beauty, the mercy, etc., the moral superiority, then we will be able to gain much more ground, inshallah.
Inshallah. I think that's all the time we have for this segment. Inshallah, we'll go for a short break and we'll be right back.
Amazing stories. In this program, we get to know about people of the past whose stories were mentioned in the Islamic tradition and related by the Prophet, peace be upon him.
That verily us, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we tell you about the best of the stories. We tell you about the best of the stories. When we narrate a story, when we read a story, when we try to benefit from a story, what we are trying to do in reality is to go back through the steps, through the different parts and sections of this story until the story is actually completed, and that we can take the actual benefit directly from the story.
Sheikh Lutfi will narrate these stories in his program Amazing Stories.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered one of the lands to come closer, the destination. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered one whole city to come closer, to move closer to this dead person.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. One question I'd like to ask is, what can we learn from the West in terms of civilization? Are there any things we can learn
Sure. I think there's plenty of things we can learn, and there's lessons that we can take and apply those in Islamic civilization. I think one of those has been mentioned before is equality would be a good one. We sometimes see oppression in different means, whether that's through leadership, oppression from leadership, or oppression by class and division. We could also learn perhaps through philanthropy. I think that's something that's missing in the Islamic world. We have zakat, we have those kind of means, but we don't see, I don't think on the largest scale as we could possibly see from some of the wealthier Islamic nations, the use of philanthropy in helping their brothers throughout the world and setting up perhaps educational systems or other systems. We see sometimes the money from that's being harvested or taken today from oil and other things is being used for self-gain, and that's a shame in this time. You know, when we have this window of opportunity where Allah has blessed us with an abundance, but it seems like we're just throwing it away and we're wasting it when it could be used for the better good of man.
So I think one of the things that we're lacking in the Muslim civilization or the region here is law and order.
The rule of law is certainly one of the correct definitions about civilization. That the more you have rule of law, the more civilized you are as a nation.
Yeah.
And there can't be anything better than the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, لو أن فاطمة بنت محمد سرقت لقطعت يدها. Had Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, stolen, I would have cut her hand off. So everybody is equal before the law.
Yeah.
And that happened throughout the Islamic civilization. It was proven.
Yeah.
Shuraih as a judge sat on a case between Ali radiallahu anhu, who was the Khalifa, the prince of the believers at the time, and a Jewish man. They disputed over a shield. And Shuraih judged in favor of the Jewish man, where the shield was actually Ali's, not the Jewish man's.
Yeah.
So the Shuraih, based on the evidence presented to him, judged for the Jewish man, and Ali accepted the judgment because even though he is the prince of the believers, he is the Khalifa, but yet the rule of law.
Wrong,
This is the judge, and he judged against me. So he accepted it, and that is when the Jewish man converted to Islam.
Yeah.
And that is the moral supremacy that I want us to show to the people. And I want also, since we're talking about the West, I want us also to not think of the Western civilization as the antithesis of Islamic civilization.
Or the enemy.
Islamic civilization has been always capable of absorbing the good in all of the civilizations that it encountered. The Persian civilization contributed that which was good to the growth of Islamic civilization.
Sort of the
Indian civilization, various civilizations. So Islamic civilization did not, did not adopt this.
It didn't form by
enmity
itself
towards other civilization, and did not consider itself to be mutually exclusive, or Islamic values to be mutually exclusive, because we believe that God gave man discernment.
Yeah.
So man has the ability to discern between right and wrong, and with that alone, with the intellect alone, you can arrive at the right conclusions. Yet, you still need the divine guidance, because this discernment is not absolute without the divine guidance, and it is not unlimited. It is limited, and it is also not absolute, and it can be confounded by biases and prejudices and many other things. So yet, if you ask people, even atheists, is cruelty to animals a good thing or a bad thing? Is kindness to the parents a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
You will get the same answer from a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, an atheist. You will get the same answer, because that's just how Allah created us, the genuine inclination that Allah placed in us. But then the religion comes to confirm that which is good and to purify that which is bad. So I think that we have to know our religion, be confident, by more recognition of our religion, more awareness, and that will give us that ability to discern between what is presented to us, to take what is good, and to leave what is not.
Okay, do you have any last statements about this?
Yeah, it's the moral compass is what I would say that's been given to all of us by Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And we've been blessed with that, and we should listen to that. But yes, we have to study. Yes, we have to find out what is the true way. But at the same time, we need to listen to that inner voice that's been given to us.
Yes.
Man can never rule himself and change his heart by law alone. It won't happen, especially when it's man-made law. And so we have to use the law, this divine law that's been handed down to us, this truth, these core principles, and we have to live our life and abide our life by that, or we'll never change society. And by our own living by those principles, then society will want to change.
Yes.
We do not have to force anything on anyone. They will see how we live, they will see our daily life, how we interact with each other, how we interact with our families, and they will want that kind of life. They won't be against it at all.
Yeah. Okay, that's all the time we have. I'd like to thank you, Brother Abdurrahman.
Thank you so much.
And Dr. Hatem Al-Hajj, thank you very much for showing. And the audience, thank you very much. And that's all the time we have. Our email address is talk@huda.tv. And that's all for now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
When things go wrong as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when things go wrong as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt.